Every year, countless thousands of ordinary buildings are demolished, smashed down to make way for the new. For many, this fate is unavoidable.
But some are so special they're saved, carefully taken down piece by piece, stored away until a new home for them can be found, and they can be lovingly and painstakingly rebuilt.
These are not grand buildings, or always exceptional pieces of architecture, but preserved within the fabric are extraordinary stories. Stories about who we are as a nation and what we have achieved.
About the materials and the techniques we use.
It's not as easy as it looks.
And why we build the way we do.
It just feels like you're making it the way it should be made.
In this series, I'm going to uncover the hidden history behind these seemingly humble buildings to reveal there's not just the houses of the great and rich that have remarkable stories to tell.
My grandfather was probably the first airman to die in the First World War.
Goodness me.
Well, I'll be seeing how these huge, incredibly complex jigsaw puzzles that were once buildings are actually put back together again.
I'm on the quay at Haverfordwest in Pembrokeshire. It's hard to believe it now, but 500 years ago, this was the heart of one of the busiest and richest ports in South Wales. Indeed, a commercial hub of national importance. Sadly, no buildings survive now from the place's medieval heyday, but 30 years ago, there was one. A structure, enigmatic, strange, and mysterious, that was tucked away over there.
In 1983, that last surviving building on the Haverfordwest quayside was falling apart. But it was saved by 4 young apprentices who painstakingly dismantled it stone by stone. And it's here, in these bags. And now, nearly 3 decades later, I'm going to join those 4 same men as they try and put it back together again in a museum 100 miles from where it originally stood.
And I'm going to try and find out what this unusual building actually was, who lived in it, who worked in it. I've studied buildings for years, and I must say this one I find particularly baffling. Now, it was here, just behind this pub. The strange tower-like structure was incredibly sturdy, with exceptionally thick walls. Most intriguingly of all, the ground floor consisted of a vaulted chamber, and above it, on the first floor, was a single-room dwelling that originally could be accessed only from the outside by a ladder. It dates to the 15th century and, unofficially, has been called the Merchant's House. This terrain makes things a little bit complicated, but the building stood just about here, with its back, as it were, to the cliff in front of me, and its site now occupied by these ladies' lavatories. I have a photograph of the building just before it's being dismantled. So I'm standing now roughly here, almost at the door. Incredible transformation. But what on earth was this building? Was it related to the port, just over there? Or, since it has a great sort of vaulted ground floor, I wonder if it was a fortification of some sort, perhaps related to the castle, which is just there.
Maybe the building itself will hold some clues. It's going to be reconstructed here at St Fagans National History Museum in Cardiff, where buildings from across the nation have been preserved. I'm meeting Geralt Nash. He was part of the original team who dismantled the Haverfordwest house and is now project manager of the rebuild.
So who are these guys taking the building down?
These are taken about 30 years ago, and they're still here, still working with us today.
All of them?
Yes,
4 of you?
yes.
So you're like the Fab Four rebuilding this building?
What can I say? This is Ian, our head carpenter today. This is Mike and Andrew, stonemasons, and that's yours faithfully there in the middle.
It's almost unique, isn't it, that length of time has passed and those guys are still here, still working on it.
Yes.
That's wonderful, isn't it?
30 years on, those same 3 craftsmen are beginning work on the reconstruction. So this is the team.
This is the team.
Hello. Hello. I feel like I've met you all before. Maybe slightly younger, slightly hairier, slightly leaner.
Yep, that's right.
I'm Charlie.
Hiya, Charlie. How are you, mate?
So what are you actually doing here?
These are the actual stones from the Haverfordwest house. We've bagged them up and in storage, and they're just ready to be taken down, bag by bag, and split open and used.
Okay, so it's not that every stone goes back into exactly the same position it would have been.
No, it'll just be cornerstones, window stones, door stones.
So all of
Just
the edges
all the keystones
go back.
All the arch stones will go in as arch stones. And then it's just building in between then, just filling in.
Do you think the fact that you were there when it came down is going to help you putting it back together, or do you think anyone could follow those instructions?
It helps immensely because there may be little quirks in the walls or in the roof, and you get that in your memory, and you'll be able to put it back.
Well, I'd be interested to see where they all go, because that's quite a puzzle from where I'm standing. But before the stonemasons can get to work, an artificial cliff needs to be constructed. In a secluded glade in the museum grounds, a hillside is dug away and huge boulders lifted into position. This is to replicate the location where the building originally stood.
I have an idea what the building will actually look like eventually.
So this is a cut through the building, a section, and it's got a vaulted sort of ceiling or floor structure.
Yes, and as you can see, the building's built up against this rock face.
So it's hard up
Oh, absolutely.
against a cliff. That didn't put you off at all?
No.
So you're not just trying to rebuild a medieval building, you had to make one where you've got to rebuild a medieval kind of environment, medieval bit of landscape.
Yes, we do. It's the
Don't
whole
make
package.
things easy
No,
for
we don't, do we?
The exceptionally sturdy construction of the mysterious cliffside building leads me to believe it could be a fortification connected to Haverfordwest's castle.
The castle was built in the early 12th century by the Normans during their conquest and settlement of South Wales. This became a gateway into South Wales, with the town and the port growing around the mighty castle.
I'm meeting Simon Hancock, curator of the town's museum, to see if the Norman English settlement of Haverfordwest could offer some clue to the purpose of our 15th century building.
Well, the Normans really began with the settlement of Pembroke in 1093. They removed the native population who were dispersed north.
It became known as Englishry, didn't it? Little England, this part of Wales.
William Camden, writing in the reign of Elizabeth I, describes Pembrokeshire as Anglia Transvalia, Little England beyond Wales, and that name has always stuck. It was absolutely a beacon of the power of the English kings in southwest Wales, and it attracted enormous hostility. It was a war zone, and you're talking of a 150-year time span.
But the troubles they continue into the 15th century, don't they? In the town and castle, they were attacked by Owen Glendower during his uprising in 1405. That's correct, isn't it?
That's right. We know that they took the town.
Yes.
There was no Geneva Convention, so any of the civilians would have been either captured, enslaved, or put to the sword. But we know that the castle withstood their assault.
This is fascinating. The town's destroyed, 1405. Our building is erected, well, maybe 80 years later yet. Presumably, the memory of the destruction, indeed centuries of destructive attacks on the town before 1405, inspire, inform, encourage the builders of our little house to be very, very conscious of attack.
The psychology of defence would have been paramount.
It's now September, 4 months since building work began. Stonemasons Mike and Andrew are completing the vertical base walls, using traditional lime mortar to bind together the tons of stone. Soon they'll face their greatest challenge, the construction of the vault. So in a way, you've basically recreated a little corner of Haverfordwest now. And this is the cliff face.
Yes.
Because it is a vaulted arch, we need something substantial to hold it.
So are you excited about the next stage? Because this is really, up till now, it's relatively traditional building, but you're about to get sort of medieval, aren't you?
It will get a bit more exciting now when we come to the vault, because we don't build them often, you know. It's going to be good.
That's exciting.
That's exciting. That's what we're going to look forward to.
For me, the biggest mystery about our little building is that vault. Because a vault takes an awful lot of time, of labour, of materials, basically expense to build. Now, normally you find them in the buildings of the great and the good, in churches and castles, or places like this. This is the Bishop's Palace in Lampfey, near Haverfordwest. Much of the palace dates to the 15th century, the same as our building. It's fortified with high walls, battlements and gatehouses. This is for protection, but it's also a statement of power and status. Now, this is one of the bishop's great halls built in the 14th century, and if you just sort of ignore the scale of it for a second, there's something very familiar about it. And if you look, there's a staircase leading up to the first floor where the living quarters are. This is where the bishop would hold court. And down below, you have this magnificent vaulted chamber. Look at this, isn't this incredible? And this is actually a barrel vault, just like ours, and it's the most simple kind of vault that there is. It's the kind of thing that the Egyptians used underground for drainage and for tombs. And actually it took the ingenuity of the Romans to really kind of master the vault and start using it above ground. And that's because it's actually a lot harder to build a vault than you might at first think. Now, the thing about a vault is that actually it's just a whole series of arches next to each other. And I'm going to try and make an arch out of some bricks and show you the principles. Now, to start off with, you have to build your side walls. Now, it's very simple when you're building straight-sided walls because gravity does a lot of the work for you. It holds them in place as long as you don't get too tall. Now, if we want to start bringing an arch, this is where we're going to spring it from. We need to use either lots of different bits of stone with wedges in between them, or if we're using a brick, we need to use a cut brick. So then you can imagine if you start stacking these up, gravity is going to want to start pulling them in. So you need a former, something like this. And this is really the secret to all arch and vault building. And this is part of the reason why it's so much work, is that not only do you have to build a vault, you have to build a former before you can build the vault or arch. This former is going to take all of the load until you finish the arch. So actually the former has to be incredibly strong and take tons and tons of masonry on a full-size vault. You've also got to make sure that they're going to meet. Right, so in a way this is the most important brick, because this is basically the keystone. And in principle, it should lock our arch. The bit you've got to do now is the kind of do-or-die bit. You have to drop the former and then transfer the load off the former into the arch. And in principle, it should stand up. But I have a sneaking suspicion, well, who knows? Let's give it a go. Okay. Right, that's positive. Whoa. What? Don't say anything too soon. No way. Woohoo! Hey! So that is how you build an arch. You get a sense of how hard it is to make an arch, and that's just a little section of a vault. And so it really reinforces that question. Why did they go to all the effort of making a miniature version of a bishop's great hall on the quayside at Haverfordwest? Vault building was also expensive. The reason why can be seen back at the museum, where Ian the carpenter is finishing the substantial formwork they need for the reconstruction.
So is that the last piece?
Yep, I got him.
Ian's made 6 sturdy trusses, which have to be strong enough to support the massive weight of the vault stonework. The frame needs to be self-supporting, sitting within the building's walls.
So you've only gone halfway?
That's right, yeah. We found in medieval times with vaulted arches, there's a straight joint in the middle of the vault. Some people say it was an expansion joint, things like that, but total rubbish. It was because the timber was expensive, so they only made the formwork in sections. So we've done this halfway. So this is all wedged up in place. The masons will do the stonework over it. When that's set, we'll drop it on the wedges.
What, knock out those wedges?
Knock the folding wedges out so it drops, and then we'll move it over and wedge it back up into place again.
Thank you. It's quite amazing to think that sort of, what, 400 or 500 years ago, they were doing making exactly this shape.
Exactly the same thing.
Same size, same shape.
Same principles.
Slightly different timber.
Slightly, yes, just the same.
My research is leading me to believe that our sturdy vaulted structure may have been some sort of fortified building. But its design and location here, right by the quayside at Haverfordwest, have led many to think it was in fact a merchant's house.
Over there was Haverfordwest's medieval quay. Incredible, some warehouses survived, but from the 19th century. And indeed, the quays and the port remained active until the railways arrived in 1853, then all went into decline. Incredible. Here I've got this rather tantalising photograph taken about 1900 from roughly where I'm standing now. I can see a number of the warehouses shown in this photograph still survive. This ramp with steps, that survives, as does this warehouse at the top of the ramp, now with green shutters. Very striking are these large ships tied up to the quay. Of course, in the Middle Ages, there would have been many ocean-going craft here, bringing in goods from all over Western Europe.
This is the oldest picture of the port I can find. It's a 1748 engraving. Although made 300 years after our building was constructed, many of the medieval harbour buildings are still standing. Large seagoing vessels crowd the port, and there are many substantial warehouses. At high tide, the river was navigable for ships up to 250 tons, which arrived from London, Bristol, France, and Spain.
With its vaulted ground floor, which could be used for storage, and its proximity to the harbour, our building could well have been a merchant's house. Here, on the coast at Tenby, 20 miles away from Haverfordwest, is a famous merchant's house, dates from the late 15th century, and has been fully restored by the National Trust.
I've come to see if this building has anything in common with ours.
Oh, well, the first obvious difference is that the ground floor is not vaulted in masonry. It's a big timber beam and joist, a timber structure. And here, an absolutely huge fireplace. It's wonderful. So this, presumably, would have been a kitchen originally, or perhaps a shop, because it was separate here, this level, from the level above. That staircase has been added quite recently. Well, very different. The first floor, living area, a great hall really, a lot of light, large scale, and terrific details. Look at this, for example, a very ornamental mullioned window, beautifully carved, light flooding in from three sides, and a sense of space. But, although differences, I observe there's something here which is intriguing. Look, below the corbel is a blocked doorway. This would seem to be the door leading to the street. So here we see This house was originally entered at first floor level, like our humble building, with a staircase through this door down to the street, the court, the ground level there. Oh, this house, unlike our building, has a third floor. And quite a room it is indeed, with a tremendous roof structure of a sort I've only seen in Pembrokeshire. It creates a lovely interior, very light, very habitable. It does really feel like the home of a rich Tudor merchant. The high status of merchants who lived in houses like this in the late 15th century suggests very strongly that our humble building was not a merchant's house. Although, of course, it could have been the home of a lower status trader, or perhaps it had a different function entirely.
With the supporting formwork now complete, stonemasons Andrew and Mike have started work on the vault.
So you have to lay it on the flat edge. So that would go...
Yeah, just like a sandwich.
Like that?
That's your facing edge underneath there. So when you come in from under the building...
Yeah.
That's what you like.
That's where you'll see just
the
flat. Yeah.
And then after you've got that first sort of arch, do you then have to backfill to get weight on top of it before the formwork comes up?
We tighten the arch up. We get tons and tons of slate and knock it in every joint. So
you pre-stress it?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Really tightens it up, and then with a bit of luck, we can take that formwork down. And that's how
luck.
Yeah, and then it stays there, you know?
We need a bit of that now.
You need a bit of that. Yeah. You saw it before it came down. I mean, was it really well built? I mean, was the quality of the masonry on the arch? I mean,
solid.
Yeah.
Solid.
Was it well done?
It was very, very well built.
We had a bit of trouble knocking it down, to be honest, didn't we?
We were there for 6 weeks, and every day we worked hard.
I mean, there's a huge amount of effort. I mean, first of all, you almost make a timber building. I mean, that is strong enough. You could build another floor, on top of it. Then you go to all the effort of building the stonework, and then you take out the wood. So in a way, why didn't they just build a wooden floor?
All this work gone into here, and it must be for some reason. I think it's done for security reasons.
Now we've begun work on the building, it's become clear just what a simple structure it is. And this pile of stones here tells a very interesting story about it. Now, it's called random rubble. It's what the building is built of. But what's interesting about these stones is that they've come from different sources. Now, it's all local to Haverfordwest, but like this one here, that's a river stone. So they've just gone around the local area, scavenging materials wherever they could find them. And what's fascinating is you've got to remember this is the medieval period when stonemasonry is a really refined art form, and beautiful cathedrals are springing up all over the country. So it makes our building pretty low rent.
The few medieval buildings that survive in Haverfordwest are all built of stone. There's a castle, of course, but also 3 churches. The fact that the town could afford to build and maintain 3 churches reveals how wealthy it was in the Middle Ages, a wealth that came from trade. The stonework in St Mary's reveals just how skillful medieval masons could be. And on this arcade that dates from the early 13th century, you see wonderful examples of the work, the skill, the genius of masons. This work, of course, is in a great contrast to our rather rough and ready rubble masonry in our little building.
The oldest parts of the church are 12th century, but many of the more elaborate and expensive features were added around the time our building was constructed. These include the clerestory windows and the wonderful oak roof.
What's fascinating is that at the same time, second half of the 15th century, other churches in the town were being embellished. Clearly, there was a sort of building boom underway. Wealth was flooding into the town. Does this boom offer a clue to the use of our building?
I'm hoping architectural historian Tom Lloyd may have an answer.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Good.
Now, this is a wonderful church, And I'm just wondering, well, why was it embellished such a wonderful way, you know, in the late 15th century? I mean, I presume it's because the town got up in status or something like that?
It did. Something incredibly important happened in 1479. It received a charter from, in fact, the Prince of Wales, who was Lord of Haverford, and that charter set this town on a course to prosperity that carried it through for centuries. The charter of 1479 established a mayor, bailiffs, a sheriff,
yes.
24 councillors. And that really meant, apart from anything else, that it was free of feudal overlordship. The place had self-government. The mayor had his own pew.
Right, this
you
is
can see
pew.
The status, the new boss of Haverfordwest. The feudal overlord had gone. The place had self-determination. And, of course, the common council, the bailiffs, and the merchants of the town, they were the heads of the trade guilds. It absolutely prospered. By 1577, it was described as the best-built and most civil town in South Wales. These people were free, and they were rich. They'd got their independence, and they were jolly well going to show it.
Fantastic. A new elite, new men for the new age.
Absolutely.
It seems possible that the construction of our building was connected to this enrichment of Haverfordwest's merchant elite in the 15th century. But the medieval layout of the town again indicates it wasn't one of their homes.
Well, in front of us, the High Street. I mean, this, of course, was the heart, wasn't it, of the merchants' town.
It sort of got richer as you came up the hill, I suspect.
To the high town here.
The high town, because the bottom would have been, you know, smelly and busy, and that's where the port was all happening.
Yes.
You wanted to get away from that.
Yes. Down there, Quay Street, that was the rough end, wasn't it?
Well, like all ports, you know, rough and prosperous.
That seals it for me. Our sturdy tower wasn't a merchant's house, but I still suspect it's somehow connected to their trade.
It's now 5 months into the build, and stonemasons Mike and Andrew have completed work on their vault.
Morning. I'm back visiting site on what promises to be a momentous day, because today the art of the stonemasons is really going to be put to the test, because we're going to remove the formwork, the wooden support upon which the vault of the Undercroft has been built. And so, of course, the big question is, will the vault stay standing when the supports are removed? Hello, guys. Look at this. It's a bit like a hedgehog, isn't it?
Yeah.
So which side did you do, Mike?
The best side. The good side.
The competition. The thing about it is, guys, neither side is going to work without the other, so I hope they both work. So have you sort of stress tested it at all?
You've just done it for us.
It's actually, you know, it's a pretty thin structure. I was very confident, and now actually I'm realising it's slightly more delicate. Are you still confident?
You'll be
Because
fine.
that's pretty thin. Yeah. So you build the arch, and you stand underneath it when you take out the formwork.
That's right. It's called having faith in a fellow tradesman.
Right. What's the plan then?
You take that side, I'll take this side.
And what do you two do?
We're just watching you, just in case it goes wrong, we're going to run back.
That's it, yeah.
Very good. Right, so what, just tap that back?
That's
that.
it. Just tap it.
Oh. Right.
We'll get the boys in now and we'll undo the props and hopefully it'll just drop.
Don't use the word drop.
No.
Not the word drop.
So, are you ready then, gents? Yeah.
Mine's a bit
tight.
Oh, it's wobbling.
Good.
Okay. Mine's out.
Right. Do you want to come out so that it doesn't drop on your head?
Good idea, Charlie.
That's still... Right, now what do we do?
Is it loose?
No, it's all the way down though.
Is it?
So...
All right.
Yeah. Oh, when it comes out, what do I do? What do I do when it comes out?
Don't you worry about a thing. It's out.
Whoa!
How was that?
Look at that, that's clear.
Absolutely a good 3 inches there.
That's a vault.
That's it. Foreman's done his job.
Hey!
Masons have done their job.
Well done.
I don't think the medieval owner would have gone to all the trouble of building a vault like that unless it was for protection. Although I don't now believe our building was connected to the castle, it does remind me of fortified farms called bastles. There's an example I'm looking at here. It's remarkably similar. Barrel vaulted ground floor, one room above, entrance only via a first floor door. In its scale and its status, humble, modest. So it's sort of uncanny, really, the similarity, and a very good pointer to what our building could have been. But unfortunately, as far as I know, these bastles, these fortified farms, exist only in one place, on the border of England and Scotland, and not in Pembrokeshire. 500 years ago, in the lawless Scottish borders, marauding bands of raiders, known as reivers, terrorised the countryside. They stole and often murdered on a massive scale. In response, wealthier families built bastles, defendable farmhouses. Their livestock could be secured in the vaulted chamber, while the family retreated to the first floor, pulling the ladder up behind them. I'm looking at the area of the English-Scottish border, and it shows the whole range of bastles. They're shown as red triangles. There's lots of them, and then, as one goes south, they fall away. Virtually no bastles. But now here's Wales, and as you would imagine, lots of fortifications of different types, but seemingly no bastles, except, much to my amazement, when one comes right to the south, southwest, into Pembrokeshire, there are bastles, and they're shown here as dark blue inverted triangles all around the region of Haverfordwest. Indeed, could our building be one of these bastles?
Two of those South Pembrokeshire buildings described as bastles are tucked away down this bumpy track at Carwell Farm. And I'm fascinated to see if they bear any resemblance to our building. This is it. And to be honest with you, it's quite extraordinary. I mean, it's the same sort of size. It's built similar stone. It's got a very similar pitch to the roof and first floor access. I mean, it's pretty uncanny, actually. Yeah, there's a vault. Look at that. I mean, almost identical to ours. It's extraordinary. This is the first floor above the vault, and this is the original entrance here. One entrance, defendable. There are windows, but they're sort of arrow slit windows, you know. They're defendable. And it seems to me, given the fact that our building was only 15 miles from here, that it must have been some kind of defendable structure, some kind of bastle. I'm meeting Richard Suggett from the Royal Commission on the Ancient and Historical Monuments of Wales to discover what he knows about this ruin. Hello.
Hello, Charlie.
Hello, Richard. How are you? Thanks for coming down.
Good to see
It's
you.
a wonderful little building, this, isn't it?
Absolutely wonderful.
Now, it's a defensible structure, isn't it? I'm right in thinking that.
I think that's fair enough to say, yes.
And it's a bastle, right?
It's similar to a bastle. A bastle is a kind of vertical longhouse with the cattle underneath, the people on top. This is formally similar, but it's got a fireplace down below.
Yeah.
I think we have to think of it as a refuge, more than a permanent dwelling, a place where you could take refuge in an emergency.
So it's a medieval panic room?
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it.
What kind of emergency? I mean, what is out there roaming these hills back in those days that you want to hide from?
We are in the Englishry, so...
Which is?
Which is the English-speaking part of Pembrokeshire.
Are we talking about tribes or groups of men coming from mid and North Wales to kind of see what they could get out of the Englishry?
We're talking about people only a few miles away to the north. By the 16th century, it's pretty clear there wasn't aggression, there was avoidance. So I think we have to think of another sort of threat. All these little vaulted structures are located near the sea. I think it's at least plausible that the people who had these houses as refuges were anxious about pirates. And there are some late medieval references to piracy in the Bristol Channel.
Now, we have a little building that came from Haverfordwest.
You do, indeed.
That's on a river. So do you think, because I'm beginning to wonder, is our Haverfordwest building a defensible building? Is it a little basalt kind of structure?
Well, it certainly has defensive features. It's structurally similar to this sort of building.
I don't like the sound of your tone of voice. What is it then?
Well, we do have a clue in this drawing of Edward VI's coronation
Now, where's
procession.
this?
This is the commercial heart of London, and you can see various shops and things here. But moving along here, you can see some buildings which are not unlike... Yes, exactly.
So vaulted ground floor with half timbering, more decorative.
Yeah, it's
half-timbered
jettied.
building
Yeah,
above,
that's
jettying
right.
over the top. Sort of similar layout
Oh,
to
yes,
ours, but a bit grander. So what do we think these buildings are?
Well, it's pretty certain that they were warehouses. You have shops here, warehouses here.
So your theory would be that it's a secure lockup?
Exactly, secure lockup. Maybe it's not a romantic theory, but it in fact explains the evidence there.
With its quayside location, it does make sense that our building was some sort of medieval strong room. To discover if any of the goods that were imported into Haverfordwest could warrant such high security, I've come to the town's record office. Now, on the screen in front of me is a copy of a document held at the National Archives in Kew. It's a petition dated 1327, directed towards the king from a body of merchants in Haverfordwest. They are sort of complaining about having to pay duty more than once on their goods because they got blown to the wrong port before arriving here. But the key thing is, these chaps proclaim that they have brought wine many times. Obviously, it's a big business bringing wine here from France, and wine, a high-value commodity. So it occurs to me that our vaulted cellar, our little building, was probably part of this industry, the importation of wine into Wales through Haverfordwest. Wine would have been stored in the vaulted ground floor, been kept safe from thieves, from fire. Also, vaulted structure made out of stone, very good atmosphere for storing wine. Some further delving in the town archives has uncovered another record which I believe could be the crucial breakthrough in my investigation.
Now, this really is quite a discovery. It's a manorial record of the Voyles, who are a very distinguished merchant family of Haverfordwest. It's dated 1584, and this is clearly a 20th century reprint. And on this page, we see that they had a tenement, it says, in Ship Street, the old name for Quay Street. And next to this tenement, a property owned by them, described as one cellar and a chamber. Surely that's our building. One cellar, the vaulted ground floor with a chamber above. What's fantastic, in my view, is that it says this building is in my own hands, valued at 10 shillings yearly. I take that to mean that they own the building. It's not let. Value, if it were let, is 10 shillings a year. But they have it in their own hands still because they are letting someone live there. So presumably John Martin is a retainer of the family, a servant, living in the chamber above the cellar. Absolutely amazing.
It's now spring, and stonemasons Andrew and Mike have resumed work on the first floor walls, following a winter hiatus. They've also built some steps, which probably weren't a feature of the original building, but are necessary for public access.
Ready then, Ben? Yeah?
With the stonework shooting up, Ian the carpenter has begun prefabricating the roof. He's using modern machinery to cut everything to size, but then a traditional adze to finish. So what's the plan?
Well, the plan is...
Yep.
You're going to sit there and strap that to your leg.
And what does this do?
That's a bit of leather that's going to protect your thigh.
I like this sort of simple technology. This is sort of this is what they would have used, isn't it?
We try and keep things nice and easy.
I mean, this is commitment to the kind of restoration course, isn't it?
Plan now is to add this joist.
Okay, so what do you do?
All you do, just skin the top of the timber, nice and easy, and all you got to worry about is if the grain changes, then you just go from the opposite way.
Is the key to sort of let the weight of the adze do the work?
You have the weight with a little bit of power on it, and just try not to dig it in too much.
That's digging, isn't it? So come round.
Come round a bit.
That's not as easy as it looks.
It isn't, is it?
No. I thought I'd be...
You thought you'd had that finished by now, didn't you?
I thought I could do that.
Yeah, another full day on it, and you should be all right.
So that's much better than that. Yeah. But it is going to look amazing.
Oh, it will. It is a lovely finish on adze. It's going to look great.
By May, the walls are complete. All the wood has been cut and the construction of the roof has begun.
Morning, guys.
Morning.
The original roof had been replaced long before the building was dismantled, so the reconstruction is based on a local medieval design. This is really old technology, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, mortars and tenors have been around since the Roman times.
Should we get on and get this up?
Yep. We'll bring the collar over now, boys.
You've got to put the whole thing together at once?
Yep. You're in there? Yeah. Hey, let's start putting it in.
Yep.
How's that, boys?
Is it going to fit?
Yes.
You just got to literally just sort of tip it into place.
Just tip it into place, really, yeah. How's that? Get in.
Lovely.
All right. How's that, Charlie?
It's quite heavy, isn't it? This is a really wonderful, simple roof, a beautiful piece of design. There's a really nice attention to detail as well because it's very traditional. This is a peg joint. There's two things that's brilliant about it. One is that as the building dries, as these timbers dry, it gets tighter and stronger. And what's amazing is that the Romans used to use nails to hold their buildings together. The problem with oak is that it's got this tannin in it, which is what this black staining is, and it will eat through metal, everything other really than stainless steel. So the Romans' buildings used to fall apart in a few decades, but if you use a timber peg, this will stay up for hundreds of years. Now, beyond that, there's this lovely bracket and this wonderful sort of curve shape. Now, this is really unique. I've never seen this before, and it's unique to Pembrokeshire. Sort of very beautiful because of the way that it makes this curve and brings the roof sort of down onto the walls of the building and references the lovely stone vault below.
As our building at the museum nears completion, my investigations into its Haverfordwest origins are also nearly concluded. The Theoyle family, the rich merchants who seem to have owned our building, are recorded as having lived at number 15 the High Street. It's thought that inside, the family's great heraldic fireplace survives, but has not been seen in living memory. So I've met up again with Tom Lloyd to see if we can uncover it and find more clues about the strange little building they may have owned.
So should we go and see if we can have a look? After you, go on, the door's open.
The house is now a shop with flats at the rear. In the 18th century, it was given a new facade. But behind it, much of the medieval building survives.
Oh. Well, that is quite a surprise. Well, it clearly appears to be a medieval vast window, sort of like from a church. I suppose it would have lit a double-height Great Hall.
Well, it must have done it. It gives you some indication of how high the status of this house really was. And we do have this reference to the Theoyle family, who had stained glass in a big window in their house.
This is a reference to George Owen, who describes the house in the 1570s.
He describes the house as having the stained glass in the window, showing the arms of Morgan Theoyle, who was then the occupant of the house.
So the Theoyles were big players on a national level.
The Theoyles were a very significant Pembrokeshire family. Morgan Theoyle was sheriff and mayor of Haverfordwest in the 1580s. He was a proud and very rich man, and this window is an astonishing evidence of it. And we believe as well that he had some chimney pieces carved with heraldry on them too. Thank you.
The building has changed so much that no one is quite sure where the fireplace is, or if it has survived at all. But Tom has his suspicions.
Ian. Hello. Ian's the agent for the owner of the property, who's very kindly let us come in here to do our worst. Now, here's the wall. Now, it's behind this wall that we think, this hollow wall, we think the chimney piece is. And we're basing that on this plan we have here from the Royal Commission of Ancient Monuments done some while ago, which shows the chimney piece here. We're in this room now.
Okay, so it's in the centre of this wall, in the centre. That's good to know. There it is.
And we know from old photographs what we're looking for. This large chimney piece with this heraldic overmantel, which I would think is about 5 foot high.
You have to find the middle, so 4.5 feet. 1, 2, 3, 4.5 there. That's about the middle, so I can work it out.
You should have your finger on the royal arms of England there. and no one in living memory has seen it. It's a bit like Tutankhamun's tomb, isn't it? One of the great...
But more exciting.
Treasures of Haverfordwest
Wales
is perhaps a few inches away, and yet no one has ever seen it.
We will see wonderful things.
We decide to first cut a peephole to see if the fireplace really is behind this wall.
Tantalising.
It is.
By God, it is. By God, it is. And it is the royal coat of arms, just where we thought it was.
Exact height. You've got it perfect.
Isn't this fantastic?
It's something of astonishing architectural and artistic importance.
Really exciting,
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. And it's just bizarre, look at it.
Well, it's so unexpected in this very simple room. But the thing now, of course, is if we can reveal more, then start decoding the heraldry and get the connections back to, as I say, the Voyles, if possible, and to our little building, if possible, and confirm this really is created by the people who made our little structure. Gosh!
It's front page news.
Now the position of the fireplace is known, the builders can use power tools to quickly cut away the remainder of the wall.
Well, Tom, here it is. It's quite as good, or better than we expected in a way. I love the fact it's got a lime wash.
I'm astonished to see paintwork still. I think I can see a bit of red there. I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary.
What does the heraldry tell us in terms of date and meaning?
This appears to be a religious symbolic coat.
Right.
I think we have knots, knotted ropes and initials. Now, that was going to suggest the flail which Jesus was beaten with.
The Passion, images of the Passion.
It has to be presumably before 1530s.
This is Catholic imagery.
It would appear so.
Well, this is so incredibly moving. We'll be very precise, but also we've captured the moment just before the Protestant Reformation. This is still a Catholic sort of family with Catholic imagery.
And then we have the royal arms, of course, here, as always at this date, with the French quartering before the English quartering. So the owner of this chimney piece is proclaiming his allegiance to the royal family, the king, and the Catholic Church. Very important to the status of this chimney piece.
And that's Henry VIII just before the Reformation, when he's still a Catholic monarch.
Indeed.
Wow.
Presumably.
Yes.
Then we have this coat, which is very distinctive Pembrokeshire coat, which belonged to the Owens of Hentley's, North Pembrokeshire, but very important here in this town. It seems that what the owner of this house is doing is using the arms of him, putting up the arms of important people, both nationally and locally, to claim allegiance or respect towards them.
It is amazing. These stones really do speak, don't they?
They absolutely do. You know, we are witnesses to the most exciting discovery.
Yeah. Who'd have thought that such a modest, modern-looking room could contain this early Tudor wonder?
This is a beautiful thing. It's a window into a forgotten world that tells us so much about Haverfordwest and about our family, the Theoyles, that built, we think, our humble structure. And a family who created a lavish fireplace like this are certainly one who'd require a secure vault to protect their goods.
It's been over a year since the start of this build, and part of the reason that it's taken that long is because of the incredible attention to detail and authenticity that the team have gone through to build it in the right way for the period. But at last, they are on the home stretch, so I've come up to give them a hand with some of those finishing touches.
Charlie.
G'day, mate. How are you?
Right.
You all right? Hello, mate.
You okay?
Oh, these are lovely slates.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah, tidy slate. They're very good.
Where are they from, then?
They're from Pembrokeshire.
So they didn't come off the building?
No, when we took the building down, it was corrugated sheet, so we've got some tiles from a farm in Pembrokeshire.
The hundreds of slates need to be sorted by size, but first, most of them need to be reshaped. There you go.
Yeah, that's your 10-inch tile.
So can I have a go?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
How hard? Just to sort
Make
of...
sure you've got it firmly on there.
I don't want to break it. You told me I'm going to charge. There we go. Look at that. So you get this lovely sort of chamfered ribbon edge.
Yes.
So this is what we're trying to do, is it? That's beautiful.
There we are. Yep, that's the finished. One side finished.
That's absolutely wonderful. I love it with this diminishing coursing.
Started off with 16s, finishing off with 7s at the top.
That's wonderful. So what are we doing?
We're going to hang some tiles now.
So this is literally just hung?
Yeah, pegged and hung.
But I thought they were supposed to be done with wooden pegs.
Well, they were years ago, but we're using aluminium because the wooden ones would just rot, split, and after 10, 15 years, they'd all start slipping and falling off the roof.
And so what, just pop that through?
Peg it and hang it, that's it.
That's it?
Yeah. The further up the roof you go, the tighter they actually become, you know.
Oh, so it's the weight?
Yeah, it'll just, the weight of tiles on top of them.
Yeah, that's not going anywhere, is it? And it's amazing how much coverage you're getting, isn't it? I mean, you end up with almost 3 layers of slate, don't you? Which, I mean, must be very heavy.
Very heavy.
And I suppose that's exactly why there's such big trusses in a little roof like this. Massive trusses.
Exactly, yeah.
The building is also being painted with traditional lime wash, just as it would have been 500 years ago. Five weeks later, all major construction work is complete. The house can now be furnished and the fire can be lit. Dan and I have returned to see it in all its glory.
Well, it's very sort of sculptural, isn't it? It's abstract, simple.
It is very sculptural.
Lovely.
It's also, I mean, it's the most beautiful setting with these wonderful mature woodland around it.
Well, that's a strange thing, of course. I mean, originally it stood on the town quay, you know, the bad part of towns. It's rather odd now for me to see it, you know, uprooted and planted in the countryside.
Kind of the armpit of Haverfordwest.
Exactly.
to here.
Well, a wonderful, well, so I say barrel vault, it's actually slightly pointed, isn't it?
It's a very nicely shaped arch,
of the period, of the mid-16th century. So incredibly strong, wonderfully well built. Security for one's goods, one's wine or brandy, whatever it might be. Security from fire. It's a wonderful little portrait, isn't it, of Tudor Britain. The new merchant classes, the new men, their wealth is in goods, in trade. The nobles had their, you know, castles, their fortified manors, their armies to guard their possessions. These merchants, what do they have? They have warehouses like this, secure warehouses and a storekeeper above.
And this is the upstairs. Look at that.
Oh.
Isn't it lovely?
I must say, I didn't expect it to be furnished in mid-16th century style.
Yeah, well, I mean,
incredible.
obviously it's been sort of dressed to be,
yes.
you know, evocative of the period. It's not totally finished. There's a few little bits to finish, like a bed platform up here.
Yes.
The garderobe, the toilet, the long drop. Still needs a bit, you know, like a
curtain.
Yeah, a bit of privacy, exactly. Maybe. And then the underside of the lovely, beautiful slates will be plastered.
It's wonderful being in this space, because we know the Voyles, for example, the family owned a building like this, perhaps even this one. We also know from the documents that they didn't let it out, but they had one of their men living in it to guard their property. You know, there's no police force at that time. It's down to them, isn't it, to fight off the robbers. So they put their ladder down, they go downstairs, or they just look through the windows. I mean, what do you imagine?
Absolutely, shout your head off. Human burglar alarm. That's basically what all of this is for. A human burglar alarm.
To celebrate the completion of the reconstruction, the head of the museum, Bethan Lewis, has brought her team together to perform an ancient building ceremony.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for coming and also to pay a big tribute to our Historic Buildings Unit, who have been instrumental in recreating the building that we've got behind us. So a big round of applause to them. In order to ensure there are no evil spirits going to invade our new house, we've got an opportunity now to do a topping out ceremony, and Gareth Nash, our buildings curator, will take a piece of yew tree to do the topping out ceremony. So, good health, iechyd da. Thank you.
Hey, well done, mate.
Thanks very
Looking
much, Charlie.
lovely.
Thank
you
you.
pleased with it?
Yeah,
Well done, Ian.
Hi, Charlie.
Genuinely, I think the building is beautiful. I think you've done a really fantastic job. So thank you very much. Thank you for letting me, putting up with me and my sort of cack-handed attempts to help you.
Been a pleasure.
Well done. Thank you very much. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers, boys. Thanks very much.
Who'd have thought such a humble building could embody so much history? These rough stone walls speak of a remarkable transition in British society, our emergence from medieval feudalism and the ascent of the new rich merchant class, men of great ambition who sailed across the oceans to open the new world and who laid the foundation of the modern age.
While the men that carefully demolished this building 30 years ago may have aged somewhat, it is through their determination and craft that this building has really been rejuvenated, eradicating centuries of neglect. And I think from the beautiful vault to that wonderful slate roof, the result is quite stunning. And for me, it teaches a very important lesson, that it is through the humble and everyday buildings that you truly get an insight into the way that the majority of our ancestors would have lived.